what was surprising to me when I went to my first IEEE event was the number of women that said, how do you get a mentor? And that was really kind of the #1 question, and I still hear it today. And so these are my thoughts on how you get a mentor. I believe that you often get them by just sort of informal relationships. It's not the formal relationships that, you know, we always think of. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. So I saw a quote by Melissa Myers saying, you know, if you have to go up to somebody that you don't even know very well and ask them to be your mentor, it's a little bit like the book, Are You My Mother? I don't know if you remember that book. So I take a kind of different approach to it, and that is, you know, having mentors, and I know personally I have some mentors that are from my personal or working relationships that just sort of evolved. And a lot of times they start out by you giving something first. I mean, it does evolve to a reciprocal relationship, but lots of times it is, you know, the person kind of giving something. For instance, I have a mentor who's an executive coach, and I would often give her people at companies to coach and recommend her, and she's very good, so that was easy to do. And then over time, I felt comfortable asking her questions about things that I could use her expertise on, both in the area of organizational development or those political quagmires you get yourself in. So that's an example of one that just sort of has evolved over time. Another one was a leader that I worked with at a company. He was a VP, and he did take a particular interest in women. And you know, I would help him get things he needed, and sometimes the things that are tough to get in the company, or you know, help him think through programs. And then over time I could kind of help him with, again, those kind of questions where you just really need somebody that's been kind of at the top ranks to understand the politics that go on in the areas where you really don't have visibility at that point in time of your career. So those are examples of kind of how I have found mentors. And then don't limit yourself to just mentors. You know, develop a diverse peer group, because this is a really good way to, you know, have fun, get support, get ideas, know what's going on in the Valley. I think when I was consulting is when this first became really important to me, because you don't have the network inside. But even after going back inside, I have kept this network, and I have found it to be immensely helpful. And they can help introduce you to people that you may want to meet, that could help you with, you know, a particular project or career choice. So I think, you know, these are the ways that I have always found my mentors. So again, I don't choose the "Are you my mother" approach. Maybe it's sort of kind of shyness about that. So I'm going to turn this over to Katy, who will then introduce the panel and share some of these programs in detail with you.
Today we're going to talk about mentoring, not just from the point of view of programs, but also from the point of view of everybody who's in a program is probably a mentor or a mentee as well. And if you're a mentor now, you've been a mentee, or you're going to be a mentee, right? It's just a cyclical part of a professional life. You're always a mentor, you're always a mentee, even when you're running the program, even when you're the sponsor of the program. So everything we say today about programs is also something that you should think about as a mentor or a mentee, you know, to be part of a program. So what's the benefit of mentoring? Everybody talks about mentoring a lot. I once had a client that asked me to do a mentoring program for them, and to start off with, I audited their website to see where they were, and I found that they had done 230 articles about mentoring and they didn't have a program. There's a lot of talk and not necessarily a lot of good programs. Now, Ericsson has some good programs, and there are some wonderful programs out there. TechWomen is a wonderful program. Technovation is a wonderful program. And Myra on the panel can tell us all about Technovation. What's different about a program that works is that it continues working over time. And that turns out to be unusual, because a lot of times mentoring programs start off, somebody gets some excitement, they run a program for about 6 months or a year, and then they get tired, or get another job, and the whole thing goes away. So in creating mentoring programs and going forward, you have to sort of think about what's the long term. And one of the questions people ask over and over again is, what do mentors get out of it? You know, why be a mentor? If you're a mentor, you're putting your heart and soul into this. You are spending time coaching, you're spending time advising, you're spending time teaching, you're spending time doing a lot of things for somebody that doesn't really have a call on you. And why are you doing that? The number one reason that mentors, since the last 15 years, I've been collecting data and writing reports about mentors, creating programs based on that data. And the number one thing that mentors say over and over again is that they want to give back. And they can't give back to the person that helped them. So none of us is here today because we're the perfect person and we did it all. If you think that, you're fooling yourself. Everybody is here because people have helped them. Their families helped them, their teachers have helped them, people have helped them in the professional life. Somebody has helped you and you can't pay that person back. That person may have passed on, you may have moved to another state. You can't pay that person back, but you can pay it forward. And that's what mentoring is you're paying it forward. You're helping people who, like you, were helped. And over again, when I was at Sun Microsystems, I ran the mentoring program for 10 years. And I would chase after the distinguished engineers and the fellows and the vice presidents. We were 80% vice presidents, fellows, distinguished engineers among the mentors. And sometimes it took a couple of years for somebody to say yes. And I would get these emails saying, okay, you've asked me a lot. Other people have asked me a lot. I think it's time for me to start paying back. And that paying back is why people do it. Number one reason overall. They also get experience as leaders. They get experience helping other people. So for example, distinguished engineers are often, deep experts in some technical field. But maybe they don't get an opportunity to be a manager. So getting into mentoring is one way to expand their own understanding of leadership and developing other people. Other things mentors do, they extend their network to the mentee. So when somebody asks me, can we work together? One of the things I'm going to be thinking about is, what is there in my background, in my connections, where I can help this person? Because I don't know all the answers, and no mentor does know all the answers. If you ask me about something that's deeply technical, I might know, but probably I don't. But I know her, and she knows, so let me make the introduction. So what do mentors do? They make introductions, they give references, they give resource materials, watch this video, read this book, and then they give feedback. They say, okay, so we've been meeting for about a month. We've been meeting for 6 weeks. And I keep hearing you say this thing over and over again. So let's just talk about that thing because it doesn't feel right to me. The thing that you're saying about yourself. That's not what I'm observing. So let's talk. So feedback, introductions, references to resources. The mentees get that information. They get the network. They get the specific advice. It also reduces their job-related stress measurably. It's one of the benefits to the host organization, making sure you have a mentoring program, is that the mentees are less stressed. It enhances their confidence. It helps them build better interpersonal relationships, and it gives them an understanding of their career path. So we've talked about the mentors and the mentees. What about the host organization? So I ran the mentoring program at Sun Microsystems for 10 years. It was very successful. We had an outside company come in and measure it at over 1,000% return on investment. The cost to the company of running the mentoring program was paid back at over 1,000%. 1,000% ROI is the stuff of dreams. But that is consistently the kind of numbers you're talking about. The company benefits in greater productivity, greater innovation, greater connections between the members, greater diversity, and greater retention and satisfaction. So what's not to like? So mentoring is of benefit to all the participants. whether it's informal mentoring, formal mentoring programs where they're inside the company, like the ones we just heard about for Ericsson, or ones where they're outside. So examples of outside are TechWomen, which is a coding challenge for girls to teach them to be entrepreneurs, very successful. TechWomen, which is a US State Department program started after President Obama gave the speech in Cairo in 2009 and Secretary Clinton followed up, which has been so successful that we've gone from 6 countries and 36 participants to 21 countries and 90 participants. It's gone through 5 contracts. This runs $1 to $2 million a year. This is not a cheap program, and it has to be specifically approved by Congress. It's an expensive program, and it has just been approved to continue for 3 more years. That is to say, it will go 2 years into the next presidency. So it has gone from Secretary Clinton to Secretary Kerry, who expanded the program to Central Asia, and now it will continue. So this is a profile of a very successful program. So these are programs where it's outside the company, like Ericsson, Juniper, Symantec, Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, Google. 80 companies in the Silicon Valley let their senior staff, their executives, mentor in the company women from 21 countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. It's an amazing program. So we're going to hear more about that today, and let's have our panel come up. All right, so let's start with Myra.
Hi, so I'm Myra Nawabi. I'm a senior product engineer at Lockheed Martin. I'm also the founder of Palo Alto Lean In. I've been a mentor with TechWomen. This will be my 4th year. I've also been a mentor with TechWomen. This is my 3rd year. That's my story.
Okay, so I'm a senior software engineer with Ericsson, and I've been a TechWomen mentor since 2013. I'm also a PDU Agile coach within the PDU, and I'm a great supporter, and I've taken a lot of initiatives with women in leadership at Ericsson, and that is something which is really close to my heart. So that's about me.
I'm Judy Little, and if you're wondering where the accent comes from, it's from New Zealand. I've been a lifer with Ericsson, or almost, and lived in 3 different countries, and I've lived in the US since '99, and this is my 3rd state. I came here in 2009, and I just love working with women, and there are not enough of them in our field.
Hello everyone, I'm Robert, or Bob Loftis. I'm a career and leadership coach here in the Valley. Most of my professional life has been in learning and development at Apple, and I joined Compaq, but it was actually Tandem, and then it became HP. And when there was workforce reduction, I joined Solyndra, the solar company nearby here, for a very interesting adventure. And for about the past 5 years, I've been coaching. And my focus is on using the principles of agile leader transformation, mindfulness as expressed in MDSR, John Kabat-Zinn's work, combined with Carol Dweck at Stanford and a growth mindset. So I'd like to combine those 3 things to help people move ahead in their career. Yes.
So in choosing this panel, we were looking for diversity of point of view, diversity of origin, diversity of a lot of different things, and I think we have it. Thank you very much to the panel for joining us. So we've prepared some preliminary questions so that the audience can prepare their own questions while we're covering those preliminary questions. We have both formal and informal mentoring represented here. What's the difference? What are the pros and cons of formal versus informal mentoring? And please give experience examples, because mentoring is all about real life. So give me an example of where formal versus informal mentoring was particularly effective. Myra?
So for me, so at Lockheed Martin, I was part of this informal mentoring, and I got a lot more out of that. And then our program decided that we were going to do a paid-forward program. And it's one of those things where, you know, as you mentioned, if you get somebody who's really dedicated to the program, then it continues, but if the person leaves, in this case, they had given an admin this job to put us together in the room, match us, and then the idea was for 2 years we would be in this mentoring program and we would learn, and then for 2 more years we would pay forward. I think that was too ambitious. And then so if you look at the time frame of 4 years, well, the admin was laid off in the first year, and then we just kind of looked at each other and said, nobody's interested, let's just move on. So that was one example of where a formal program without the backing of the executives didn't go very far. But in terms of informal, as I mentioned, I've been part of TechWomen, and I get as much mentoring from TechWomen as I do mentoring for TechWomen. I've also been part of TechNovation, and I have to say that even though it's a program for high school girls, but the high school girls teach me so much more about leadership and being there for them and thinking in my heels than I have ever experienced. So for me, and then the informal mentoring that I get from all the women of Palo Alto Lean-In, whether I ask for it or not, they teach me a lot and they push my buttons every day.
So I wanted to mention, I haven't told you this, Myra, but I've told people on the delegation trips that, so I'm doing mentoring certification, and TechNovation is, after TechWomen, the #1 program that people mention that they have been consistently involved with. So TechNovation is a first-class program. Thank you.
I agree.
So yeah, regards to my experience, of course, Myra mentioned TechWomen, and TechWomen is the same experience for me too. It is as much as mentoring that I can give, but it's also the amount of mentoring that I get back, because it's a two-way street for me. And that is a formal program that I'm associated with. But just to add to it, if you look around, you practically have a single mentor every day, you know, and many a times you don't realize that, like your co-workers, your teammates, in some or the other form are your informal mentors. It's just that getting that knowledge that you can reach out to them and they can help you, and if probably like forming a formal method, whether even it's like going out for a lunch with them, going for a coffee with them, that can even form an informal method. And for me, both of them have worked really well. With informal mentoring, I have this connection with the mentor. So it's always, I'm more comfortable in terms of if I have any question, I don't have to think twice, is this good? Especially if I have to ask time for my mentor, it's more easier to get the time. And TechWomen, I mean, it's a formal mentorship program that its support is amazing.
So I have a lot of experience with an organisation called Mentee, and Mentee is a very formal process. So that's companies that don't have their own mentoring program put women and men now actually on this program, and it is formal, and it really puts the emphasis on the mentee. The mentor is, the structure is all there. They have webinars for the mentees, it's extremely professional. So that's an example of a very structured system, and it's usually for a year, and it's reviewed, and there's feedback going on sort of every 3 months. So that's an example of a very formal process, and I found it works very, very well. I usually do it over the phone, and I've done it in different continents, so it's not just in the US. So it is actually very demanding, but there's a lot of exchange going on. But the informal is important too, and I think both work well. Perhaps with the informal you don't get the continuity, but perhaps, you know, as you're going through your career, different things come up, and you're able to have sort of an immediate possible discussion about it, whereas the formal mentoring, it's with one person, and I think there's a variation. So I think everyone should use both.
And I've had only experience with informal mentoring. My last corporate role was at Symantec, and we had a coaching center of excellence in which we tried to cascade the advantages of coaching from the leadership into the middle management world. But we didn't have a formal mentoring program. But as a coach, I would always talk to my clients to follow Katy's advice and Leslie's advice and find some mentors. because they were often asking me for things that they really needed to get from a good mentor. And as I was sitting here, I was thinking about, for me personally, it just came to mind, the best mentoring program that I was in was another volunteer activity many years ago, although I'm still involved with a group now called Child Advocates of Silicon Valley, also known as Guardian Ad Litem. So you're sworn in as an officer of the court, and your job is to report to the judge what should be done with this child who was taken from their home for their safety. And in that role, with a teenage boy from about the age of 13 to 18, I performed the function of a mentor to help him get through high school okay and to be in safe places to live. And that was really an experience that gave back to me an awful lot too.
Thank you. So I wanted to mention, since you talk about a formal program that's within a very formal structure, one of the programs that I'm in is with the University of the South School of Theology, which has a program to help people decide what their next step is or where they are called to do their work. And I do 2 classes a week as a mentor. I'm an accredited mentor with the University of the South, one at a church and one in a prison. And in both cases, people spend a great deal of time thinking, in little tiny steps. What am I going to do? How am I going to be different? How am I going to get there? And that long conversation ends up changing lives. And I think that the advocate program is similar to that. So we've talked about programs for children, and we've talked about programs in a legal context, in a university context. What about in a company context? So there are programs like the Ericsson, which is internal to internal, where everybody's in the company. That's the kind of program that I started off in Sun Microsystems. We had, maybe 600 mentors, thousands of mentees. It ran for 12, 14 years, 93% satisfaction quarter over quarter. And we have TechWomen, where it's much looser, where the mentors mentor each other, but the mentors also mentor the fellows. And then when they've gone home from being emerging leaders and they've graduated to being fellows, and now they're mentors too. So how are those kinds of programs different when everybody's inside together and can talk about company secrets without signing documents, and where you're on the 2 different places, you're coming from different countries, different continents, different ethnicities, different languages? What difference does that make? Bob, do you want to start us off?
Actually, that's not my area of expertise. Thanks, Katie. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
I can take that. I mean, the whole mentor-mentee relationship is about trust. So if it's internal to the organization, and I talk to a lot of folks internal to Ericsson, and I know that the trust is there. But it does give me an advantage because I can hear different things in the corridor, and it just helps me work with whoever I'm working with because I have that inside knowledge. Externally, I mean, I'm not sure if people are more open or not. I think it's about the relationship that you have with them. And obviously the culture and even the time difference makes it quite different. I was actually mentoring a woman in Egypt recently, and that was quite challenging. And she would often talk to me on her way home in the most amazing traffic. And you make it work. But again, it's if you're going to actually make an impact, you've got to have that trust. And often, you'll have a program of what you're going to talk about, an agenda, and then something happens that day, and then your mentee wants to talk about it, and that's fine as well. But they've got to feel comfortable because often those sorts of issues keep coming up again and again. How do you deal with them and move forward?
So considering I'm like senior software engineer, so my mentorship experiences that I do have mentors within the company, and I have mentees within the company too. Probably they are like new engineers starting school. So one of the things that I've noticed is when you're within the company, considering a company like Ericsson, you have tremendous breadth. So you can approach anybody, like from engineering to product to sales to marketing. So you have this tremendous breadth. But sometimes the external programs, what they add to the value to it is they give you a breadth outside of your company. So many a times your vision can be a little narrow. You can definitely help your vision greater. I mean, I can look at engineering, and then if I have mentors within engineering, I can go ahead and see that, okay, what is product doing or sales doing? The benefit of external programs is that they give you an external vision of things that are happening around, probably in Silicon Valley. And a program like TechWomen actually reaches across continents. So you are having people who are having experiences which are extremely different continent-wise, somebody in Central Africa, what their engineering experiences, how their experiences are. So if you want to look at breadth and scope, definitely interior programs are there, but maybe sometimes you can get narrowed by the vision of the company. But if you want to expand beyond the vision of the company, then there are these external programs that go.
I absolutely agree with you. For me, when I was receiving mentoring from people at Lockheed, we could talk about every aspect of Lockheed, but then, you know, we were in our own little world, and especially because there's not very many aerospace companies, you start to act like each other, you talk like each other, and even if I were to go talk to somebody from Northrop Grumman or Boeing, we would sound very much alike. I mean, there's not very much difference between us. To learn and to grow, I had to step outside of all of that and meet other people. At first, my experience was, well, I'll just mentor some women in the TechWomen program. But then when I heard about Technovation, I was like, well, let me see what I could do with these girls from high school. And I absolutely had no idea just how tremendously we would grow together. And the moment that you see that shift in that person, or the moment that you see them experience something and you're part of that journey with them, is just incredible. And I recommend that you try both programs. There's no law that says you have to do both, one or the other. I think you could do both.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask one more question and go to the audience. And the question has to do with, what's the difference between someone who's a senior technical person, a person with real experience in the professional world, and mentoring someone who's extremely very junior professionally, or is actually a girl or a young woman who doesn't have any experience? What's the difference in the mentoring relationship? What do you do differently? How does it work out differently?
So I think I have experience with all of those. When you're working with women who have goals for themselves, and they say, well, here where I am in my professional journey, and here's the problem I'm struggling with, that's a lot easier than a high school student that is like, I'm in the 9th grade. I just signed up for this challenge, and I think I want to be something someday, but I don't know what that is. And it's the same process that you get with you have to get them to take that one next step. What's that one next step? What's one thing that they're going to do? You know, when I got my Technovation team, it's not like we have built rapport together. We were just thrown for 12 weeks and out together. And you know, they come in and they're like, well, you're our coach and mentor. What do we do? And it's like, you guys know each other, but I don't know you. Could you a little bit even take a step and tell me what you like and what do you want to do? And then we can go from there. So you have to sort of break it down for them, because they're very focused at that moment in time, especially for Technovation. They're just coming in and they're like, we have 12 weeks and we want to win this $10,000 challenge, and how do we do it? So you have to help them build trust, and sometimes you have to get ingenious. With my students, I knew that I was just not reaching them, and then I started introducing them to other people. And the best experience for them, honestly, was when I took them to meet the CEO of Mighty Bell. This is a woman who sold her company, has made, you know, she's a serial entrepreneur. This is her second venture. And when the girls sat down with her and they talked to her, and after they left, this was the first time that the girls ever gave me a hug. And I was wondering why that was. And I asked them, I said, so you really enjoyed meeting Judy now? And they said, no, we now know we could do what she's doing. So thank you for making that happen for us.
So in terms of my experience, mostly has been with mentees who are either junior to me, and when it has been senior level mentorship, it's been mostly what do you say, it's a two-way street for me, because I'm learning from them, they're learning from me. But when it comes to younger students or younger engineers, what I really like to see them mentor is that I tap into their energy, because they have this entire vision in front of them, and then while you're in your career, if you start growing, you kind of get very narrowed on your vision. But one of the things also you have to remember and remind them is to focus their energies in the right direction, because they're always like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But the way I look at it is, for me, it's a way to, if I have done something differently, like when I started, I did not have a mentor when I started right out of school. So then I look at it, if I had a mentor, how would I have succeeded? And what are the best tips that I can give them so they can succeed and they can probably learn from some of the experiences that I have. And for a senior level mentorship, it's usually probably always on lines wherein they are different. I mean, I'm expert in that domain and they're not expert in that domain. So it's usually like via PowerPoint, slides, and more like two-way street.
So just building on what's been said, I think for me, everyone is very, very different, and it may be a generational issue, or it may be a life change, or whatever. But I think one thing that I do with my mentees is try and inspire them and make them feel that there are possibilities out there. And I think the key thing is that they believe in themselves. I think that's the key.
Probably how I could relate to this best is through a situation where I actually was interested in a job possibility as a contractor at a well-known company. And I used the procedure of networking for informational interviewing. And the person I targeted, I was introduced to, was 25 years younger than me. Not a girl, a guy. And often I have clients who are worried about age as a factor in the Valley, which it is. But we have a class at Lee Hecht Harrison called It's Attitude, Not Age. So I talked to this fellow. I thought for 20 minutes we would have a chance. We talked for 2 hours straight. Within a half an hour, he sent me a link to the job and said, I know the hiring manager. So it's really, what was happening there was kind of a mentoring situation, but it was a real exchange of professional interest on a natural level. It wasn't me trying to sell myself, it was me being myself. And this is what I tell my clients. The hardest work is to really focus on yourself and what makes you happy. And I think then, and what really excites you about your work, you can connect with people on many differences from you. Okay, so that was just one personal story that might help.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, yeah, I had a question, mainly based on personal experience from your careers as a mentor. Did you find yourself experiencing any apprehension when you applied to a formal mentorship program?
I mean, it's structured, and in a way you're sort of, it's a lot of responsibility. I mean, and I think someone said before, if you don't know, if it's an area that is not in your expertise, the most important thing is to refer them to somebody else. I think that's key. But I've done it for a long time now, and again, it is a responsibility because, and I think actually as a mentee, what I say to my mentees is, a lot of people will give you advice, a lot of people will share their stories, but you make that choice. It's like when you put your money in the bank and you get someone to help you with investing it, it's your money. It's nobody else's, it's your decision. So, also make sure when people, give advice that you filter it. You say, does this make sense to me? And I think that also takes the sort of the pressure off me, because you've never met the person, you're seeing them for a short period of time, and I think that's key.
I would like to even add on to what you mentioned, because when I started the TechWomen program, I was really apprehensive because I had profiles who were like PhDs and double PhDs, and I was like, what am I going to mentor them on? I could just probably learn from them. But then as the program began, I realized that there are many aspects that you do not consider, and you think that I know it by natural experiences. But then as you continue, you realize that every day, the first mentee that I had shared a double PhD, and she was into telecom. But there were a lot of things that I could share with her with regards to the company, what the Valley is doing, what the startup industry is. So do not underestimate your experiences. You might have a lot of experiences that can make this mentorship program great for your mentee.
So what I'm going to say is that I often hear young people say that I'm too junior in my, especially when I was recruiting for TechWomen last year, this question came up a lot for me where people would write to me and they're like, oh, this is such a great program, but I'm too junior in my career and I'm looking for mentors for me. I can't mentor anyone. And to that, I just have to say that that's just a bunch of baloney. Because I really do think that even, especially as women, you have so much shared interest with the other women that if you just talk about being women and gender in the workplace, you'll spend your entire 1 month talking about that and growing and coming up with best practices. That it shouldn't matter. That shouldn't be the reason that you should hold yourself back from going into a mentor program. When I was thinking about TechWomen, I was worried about the other mentors. I was like, well, how awesome are they? And can I keep up with them? So that's what helps me drive myself. I actually went to their first kickoff, and it was in San Francisco at Salesforce. And I met some of the women, and I was like, oh man, my competition isn't with the emerging leader that I'm going to get. And if I'm going to be good to her, my worry is going to be, am I going to be a good enough mentor compared to Manali or Jill or Marianne for that matter, or Katy for that matter, to keep it up, Sorry, Audrey too. Audrey's me.
So I wanted to share an experience I had in 2012. So I was one of the designers of TechWomen, and so in 2011, the first year, I was busy designing the program and recruiting mentors and picking people, and I actually had 3 of them at my company and all of this. And in 2012, I was assigned my own. I got to have one of my own. And she was the CIO and CFO of a 120-year-old organization in the Middle East. I was so intimidated by her. Like, what can I teach somebody who's the first woman on the board of directors in this country, in this old, amazing organization? What can I teach a CIO and CFO? But she wanted to know about process design, which is something I know a lot about. So we talked about process design, and at the end of the month, and I asked her, so what did you get out of it? What was the thing that you came away with? And she said, I need to spend time with myself every day. It wasn't what I was talking with her about. It wasn't what she came knowledgeable about. She was watching how things were structured. She was watching how we worked, how I worked, how other people she was around worked. And she saw something that she didn't have in her life. And so a lot of mentoring, when mentors come to me and they say, well, I'm nobody special, why would this amazing mentee want to work with me? Sometimes they just want to watch you think. They want to see how you solve problems in a different way. The vast majority of things that mentors and mentees talk about are soft skills. And any professional can talk about soft skills all day, all night, all year. So if you're thinking about whether you're good enough to be a mentor, you are. Yes.
I have a question. You are people in front of me are experienced mentors. So what would be your mindset when you are mentoring somebody who needs more help compared to other persons? For example, you can mentor some 3 people in mentoring that one particular person, the time you spend in that one particular person. So what would be your mindset? Because how you wanted to be a amazing mentor, likewise the mentees also will be thinking whether am I a good mentee for this person, because this person is really big and am I good enough for them? So how will you what will be your mindset? will you be okay to spend more time with that particular person, and will you be satisfied by bringing that one particular person, helping that one particular person in the time you would have spent in with 3 or 4 people?
Thank you.
Actually, I think that goes a little bit back to the formal versus the informal as well. So if you've got certain experience that you want to share and you want to, I mean, the informal definitely scales much better than the formal, because the formal is a lot harder to sort of make more available to other people. But I look at a mentee, and one of the things that I would spend a lot of time, and I actually have one mentee I've had now for 3 years, and we talk probably every second week. And she is in the most difficult situation with a company that's not doing particularly well, but she is so motivated, and to keep that motivation and that energy going. And I think that's what it is. I mean, you want to help people that really are motivated to do well and progress and this continual learning. I mean, it's amazing. And I look at this woman and I think, gosh, if I can, help her in any way, I want to do it. And she's in a very male-dominated industry. So that's my 2 cents there.
So I have a lot of informal, both as mentor and mentee relationships, but I'm curious on the formal part, how do you approach it as a mentee, like approaching the meetings, how are they structured? Is there an agenda?
So just, I mean, I can only sort of use my experience at Mentee. They have this formal training process for mentees. So, introduce yourself to your mentor, tell them these things. It's all done with PowerPoint, they do webinars. So when your mentee turns up, they know what they're trying to get out of that year, they've got some sort of plan, and they're very, very well prepared. So it's very helpful. And one of the questions I often ask the mentee when they come in is, well, who sponsored you on this? And often they don't know. And that's sort of the first, sort of the soft skills. Okay, so, I'm here and I'm doing these things and I'm but who in my organisation put me forward? And I think that's such a critical question, because then you know who your supporters are.
So I wanted to give a question to Bob, because he gave us this wonderful list of questions, and I don't want to leave them all, because mentoring and coaching are very related. And that's one of the reasons that we asked Bob to be on the panel, is that these 2 things are part of a long, connected way of behaving. And you had one of the questions that I want to know more about, which is, what are powerful questions and why are they useful in coaching? I want to know what you mean by that, because it sounds like it sounds like something that we should all learn about.
Oh, absolutely. And I would preface this by saying you mentioned a few of the advantages of being a mentor. And above all, certainly, paying forward is a personal satisfaction. I think this business of mentoring is very values-based. And it's important to remember how much that helps your career growth as a person, whether you're a mentor or a mentee. Putting that on your resume and being able to speak about this experience of helping someone else professionally or being helped by someone else professionally shows that you're a person who thinks ahead and is also taking extra responsibility. So I want to put that out there, that it's a very good thing for your own particular career growth at whatever level you're at. And the differences between coaching and mentoring.
The question you gave
powerful
is powerful questions. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so powerful questions are really important for coaching, but I think they're used in lots of different fields. So I'll tell you a not so powerful question. What do you want to do tonight? Do you want to go to the movies? No. Okay. A powerful question would be, what would you like to do tonight? And pause. Don't fill the space. It's the other thing that coaches do a lot of. So I was trained in the coactive coaching model from Coaches Training Institute, and powerful questions are really the key to success, because this is not problem solving. Like, I've been working with my child advocate supervisor friends who supervise volunteers to make them less of problem solvers because they have to grow the organization and empower individuals to take on more kids' cases. If they are the problem solver, they always have to be available to answer the questions, which is feels good to solve problems, right? But as a coach, you have to lay back and ask questions, which gets your client to start thinking about, what should I do about that? And keep them on track. So powerful questions are not why, but how, when, what if, things like that. So a lean-in question is, what if you weren't afraid? Which is a really powerful question. So I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Yeah, because you send us these questions and now I just sort of, what does that mean?
How are you personally evaluating success? And if you aren't having the feeling of success, how do you course correct?
So one of the things that I have been doing as a mentee and as a mentor is to come up with 3 things that they would like from this mentorship experience. And what are the 3 top things that you want from this experience? And as long as you achieve, if not all 3, at least 1 or 2 of them, then you can be like, okay, I'm partially successful or I'm successful. So identifying what the top 3 are. That is what I do. And
So I focus on what did we learn together and how did we both shift. For me, that's a critical piece. It's something that, I'm big on what's one action. And every meeting that we have, I always ask, what's one thing you're going to do today because of our interaction? And if you focus on that, what one action that you're going to take together, what are you going to do, what are they going to do, I think that spells success for you. And as I mentioned, when you get these young girls who are very focused on building a mobile app and winning a challenge, and they only get 12 weeks. There's so much that goes into building a mobile app that if you think about it, you will actually get a fever and you want to go crawl under the bed and never come out. But you have to focus on what does success look like for us in these 2 hours that we're going to meet tonight, and what's the end product that we're going to make tonight, and then you do that again because especially with Technovation, I meet with them very frequently for 12 weeks, and then I don't see them for an entire year, and then they come back in my life for 12 weeks, and it's pretty intense. So we always focus on the one action.
Another thing to look for is, are we talking about short-term, mid-term, or long-term? Because I've seen mentees who were, frankly, disasters. Needy, unwilling to follow up, complain the whole time, insult their mentor, refuse to show up, total basket case. And then 3 years later, they're a rising star. Something in the relationship spoke to them and it took them time to process. My mentees tend to go back to grad school. So I have 2 mentees from 2011 that are just finishing their doctorates. It's going to take a while to see what goes from that. Sometimes you have to take a really long view, and you put everything into that person, and then you've planted a seed, and maybe that seed's going to be a sequoia, and maybe it's going to take 50 years, and maybe that seed's going to be a gladiolus, and you're going to see something beautiful in 3 months. Sometimes you just got to wait and never say never.
I think it's an excellent point, because often the immediate impact you've made doesn't come out for a few years. And I think it's important to realize too that I had one mentee who just disappeared, and I don't know what happened. But subsequently it turned out that she was having some really serious life issues. And I think it's important, it's not about you, often it's not about you. And but there's a lot of successes, and there's small successes. And I had a discussion with my mentee, and of course this is all anonymous, but she was, well, shall I ask for a title, or shall I ask for a salary? And and we talked about the tactics and what she could or couldn't do. And in the end I sort of said, what's really important to you? And she had some financial issues. So anyhow, she comes back the next week and she'd got both. So, but she had worked out what she was willing to give up, and just by focusing on one thing, she actually got the other. So, and that's a really nice sort of short-term feedback.
This question is for Bob. You spoke to mindfulness, and this is something that I've been doing And I'm wondering, how do you bring that into coaching, or an example of how that worked for somebody or brought them to a next level for somebody?
Well, you have to be a little careful because some people aren't so disposed towards meditational kind of behavior. But just as I'm sitting here, I've been noticing being here in the moment is a challenge for us because we all have little devices that take us other places. So it is an interesting question to present to someone. What's it like to really be with your manager one-on-one? Are you both there at the time? Are you both speaking to each other? And how can you help your manager recognize your strengths and your differentiation? How can you stand up for yourself respectfully? And I asked them to consider trying some mindful techniques of not thinking, which is really hard to do when you spend your entire life and so much of your money thinking. And we all know that it's the quality of our thoughts. That's what matters the most. He or she who has the best thoughts wins. And we actually think that our thoughts drive us rather than we are thinking our thoughts. Because that, and I'll tell you, for all of you mentors and mentees, especially with young women, not any age women in this valley, the stress level here is so incredible. It's almost inhumane, but nobody talks about it. My own daughter, who's 22 and has had some anxiety issues, spent a year as a nanny in Holland. I said, Dad, I'm so much more relaxed here. And one way to deal with anxiety is to go inside and not worry about out there, but get clear about here, which is really the best way to move ahead in your career. Because when you present yourself as someone who's really there and you know your strengths, people recognize in the moment through your nonverbal behavior that you're telling the truth. You really believe in this. And if I hire you, you're going to take care of this for me because you love it. You won't sleep at night if it doesn't get done right. So I try to focus people back to attempting to do some meditation, read some books about it. In about a week and a half, Deepak Chopra and Oprah are starting their springtime meditation odyssey for free online. Just get Google Deepak meditation. And it's I'm not a daily meditator. It's a struggle for me. I think too much. So I always go to these seasonal events to kind of bring me back and slow me down a little bit. So I encourage my clients to consider being with themselves for a while and being happy being with themselves, especially my very task-oriented male clients. Slow it down. See what it's like just being there for a while.
Well, you've actually kind of answered my question. I was going to ask how to get the most out of a mentor-mentee relationship, either as the mentor or the mentee. And what I've heard from you is ask powerful questions and pause. I've heard from you be, focused. I've heard from you identify 3 things that you want to get out of it. And from you, I heard the, what are you going to take away from this? What action are you going to take? So I guess if those are the things you can do to get the most out of the mentor-mentee relationship, what has surprised you most that didn't fall into those categories that was effective?
Often I think sharing a little bit of yourself from a mentor's point of view. I mean, if you're having a bad day, share it, because we are people. We're real, and I think that is one of the important things that a mentee can take away, is that we are real people, and the more, even show your vulnerability, I think, because I think it's very, very powerful.
To add to what exactly you were saying, because I was reading the TED Talk from Brené Brown, and she talks about vulnerability. And I used to be like, I don't want to reveal my true self, but one of the things that came out really surprising is when you're revealing your true self. I mean, there are all these strategies like 3 best things, be honest, and things like that. But you learn a lot when you're your true person, and that adds up to everything, with being in the moment and things like that.
So I think for me, the thing, there's 2 incidences. As I mentioned, when I took my Technovation team to meet someone who they aspired to become, for them, they couldn't believe, wait, she really did sell her company for millions of dollars and now she started another company? Like, women can do that. That was key for them, and it blew my mind away that I take that for granted because I see so many women engineers every day, but for them, it was the first time that they had had exposure to someone that was a female engineer that had built a company, sold it successfully, had started a second one. And I think the second one was I had a mentee from Libya, and you know, I didn't think I was reaching her, but what happened is when she left and I saw her a year later, she said, you know, when you told me that life comes knocking at your door wearing a different colored pants, like I think about that a lot now. And I really focus on, you told me to focus on the lesson, and with every challenge, ask myself, what's the lesson here, instead of saying, oh, well, this person did me wrong, or this went wrong. And you know, your concept of that, what's the lesson, I better learn the lesson, because if I don't, it's gonna come knocking at my door wearing a different colored pants. She goes, not only do I think about that, but I'm teaching it to my younger siblings now. I tell my brother all the time, what's the lesson here? What's the lesson? So that was pretty surprising that she liked that, or picked up on that.
My question to you guys is, can you share experience about when your mentoree come back to you and say how much you know, your advice or your mentoring relationship meant to them, and how that helped them, you know, to grow? Like, you know, just share a couple of your thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I actually see it in body language, and I see it over a period of time changing, so the person just presents themselves differently. Much more confidently, assertively, not aggressive, but more comfortable in their own skin. And by the way, many companies here offer the program called Crucial Conversations for Speaking. Has anyone taken that program? I highly recommend that one. That's a good use of time. And it really helps with being clear about when there's a confrontation, how you can make it better for someone.
So there's a video of me with my Technovation team. I think if you Google me, it pops up. But it was surprising because, you know, the very first year I got these girls that were in the 9th grade, and I didn't know, it's hard, right? I mean, they're not your children, they come into your life and then they, like I said, they disappear, and then you see them again the following year. I didn't know just how much of a relationship we had built together, what I meant to them, and what they got out of it, until we did this video together, and I watched it so they filmed us separately, and then they put the video together, and when they sent me the video, I was on my way to a Technovation event, and they were gonna show this video that evening. So as I'm, you know, as I'm not driving, somebody else is driving, I'm carpooling with them, so don't report me to anyone. I'm watching this video, and I'm bawling, I'm crying, because I couldn't believe that we had what they thought of me until here it is a year later, and they're talking about what they got out of the program, what they got out of mentoring with me, and how much I had helped them shift. So that was the most surprising thing for me, and I wouldn't trade this experience for any of it, you know, because I think the same way that I grew from working with them, they've grown a tremendous amount as well. And this is why I mentor, you know, as hard as it is, who wants to immerse themselves in 12 weeks of chaos? Because there's no other word for it. And TechWomen is no better. It's 1 month of chaos. But you learn so much and you grow so much that you want to come back. It's like giving birth to a baby. You know, when after you've done it, you're like, I'm never doing this again. But yet you have another one. So I recommend that, you know, you always sign up, because even when you don't think you know it or you haven't seen it, you'll be surprised if you visit it again with them, the things that they say about you.
I just add like a quick note to it, because there were some people who asked like, how can I mentor, you know, and I was talking about TechWomen room. I had a emerging leader who was double PhD. So one of the challenges that we had was that getting her to talk, or like even for myself, getting myself to talk. So we used to do this for every event or every meeting. She used to ask at least one question, irrespective of whatever it is. Like even like, oh, the weather looks nice, what do you guys think about the weather? So this is what she went back to Felicia, and she used to send me for 2 months, every meeting, irrespective of whatever it is. She used to ask one question. If she attended a networking event, she used to make sure that she gets one card, whoever it is, you know. And that's something really basic, but that gave me I was very happy because I started that way. And I was like, okay, this is not something, I'm not teaching her about the next technological evolution, you know. But I'm teaching her something, or I'm sharing my experience, not teaching, but I'm sharing my experience about how to even be confident, you know, and the little things. So I was very happy. That was successful. So, yeah.
Maybe I can just go back to Katie's. When she opened, she said that you know, she didn't get to where she is on her own, and I don't think any of us have. And you think back at the people who've helped you, and you know, how often did you go back and say, hey, that was wonderful what you did for me? It takes a while. You're going at 100 miles an hour, and then you know, at some time in your life you reflect. And I did that recently with one of my first bosses. And I went back to him, and he said he's in New Zealand, and you know, I just said, you know, thanks for what you've done, and you know, he was blown away. So it's never too late to give back, but I think when you're mentoring, don't expect immediate feedback. Enjoy the process, because it is fun, and make it fun. And if you do get that feedback later on, that's great.
One difference between coactive coaching and mentoring. In the coactive coaching model, you wouldn't tell somebody what to do. You just wouldn't be directive. In mentoring, which I actually do some aspects of mentoring with my career clients, I tell them some things that I think are important for them to know to save pain and trouble. So it's advising. But ideally, say for executive or leadership coaching, you wouldn't be directing someone, telling them the right way to go on a path. You'd be asking them powerful questions so that they could themselves discover what they know, but they're not recognizing. Because most of us actually know what we should do, but we don't take action on it. So I think that's so great that an action a day or a project is so important to actually see the results of what you do.
I wanted to tell you a story of, we were in the TechWomen delegations this year. There are 3, and I went on 2 of them, Jordan and Zimbabwe. And in between, 5 of us went to Gaza and to the West Bank because we wanted to see our mentees. And this was an unofficial trip. And when we were in Gaza City, which takes some getting into, trust me, we set up some meetings. And one of the meetings, they said they expected 30 people, and 150 showed up. And this was our mentees wanting to share what they had gotten with other women. It was mostly women. Nobody expected that kind of crowd. They were bringing in chairs constantly, going, you know, this room is very small, there's no air, there's, you know, but people just kept asking questions and asking questions and asking questions. They were so hungry for it. And what we saw was our mentees who had gone home and had said, you gotta have some of this. And we felt so honored, we felt so welcomed, we felt so appreciated, and we wanted to do it more and more and more because it's like addictive. You know, you get people wanting something that you can give them, and it makes such a difference. And we just need to do it some more.
So I have a relationship with someone who's a mentor, but I find difficulty identifying things that I can give to him when I want to approach him with a question or a problem. And sometimes I look for concrete examples online. What could I bring? I really don't come up with anything. So, you know, maybe from your experience, what are some things? Should I not worry about it? Should I just pay it forward later on in my life? You know, how should I be approaching that type of problem? Also, thanks.
So let me see if I understand this. You're worried about what you could do for your mentor? Every person that I meet, and you know, I have the same problem. The people that are my mentors, they do so much for me, and I worry about, well, am I giving back? But you know, someone nominated me for an award, and and she said, you know, one of the things I'd like for you to do is pay it forward. And that was really important to me because at the time I couldn't nominate her, I couldn't do anything for her, but I feel like I've honored her, I hope I have, Joe, in nominating two other people and helping them win recognition in getting that. So for us, honestly, especially for me, when I know that my mentees are going out there in the world and they're mentoring other people and that they're giving back, that's the best feeling, because now they've sort of evangelized some of the learnings that they got from me, and in doing that, they're touching other lives. So just focus on that.
Yeah, I have a couple of points to that. I read recently that, and there's a lot about happiness psychology that you can see TED Talks on. It's really important. And if you have 4 or 5 meaningful discussions in a day, your happiness quotient goes up, which means your biochemistry improves, your metabolism benefits. So I always tell my clients the value of informational interviewing, which would be a little mini mentoring, is that you're letting this person who's really expert at what they do actually tell you why they love doing what they do. Nobody asks this. You know, when you're working every day, you're just doing your job, you know, hour after hour after hour. And if someone who understands the field asks you why you're doing that, it's a great, honor to be able to tell somebody who gets it why you love doing what you're doing. So I like the idea of bringing things and helping, you know, the mentor in some way, but I think just by showing up and being there, it's a big benefit.
I was just going to share one other thing that's worked for me, and that's to share information with people that you think is relevant to them. So if you see an article that you think they could find interesting, and the advantage of doing that over time is that you've been giving, so that when you do come to ask, it's not like the only time they see you is asking for something, but they have a recollection of you keeping in touch for other reasons.
One of the things that I wanted to add too is that if there is any network that you could help them connect to, then that is also helping increase their network. So many a times it might not be a direct correlation, but if you feel that, oh, this is even sometimes LinkedIn, you know, like some fellows think as LinkedIn, if you can think that they can benefit from your network, even if it's LinkedIn, then you're still giving them back. So that is something that I do.
I mean, from a mentor, I have 0 expectations. I just want that mentee to go out there and be the best they can.
Thank you all for being here. It's great to hear your insights. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on what an optimal age to be mentored is. How young should you start mentoring? How young, so say I wanted to be mentored, how young should I be to be mentored? No, I'm thinking.
I mean, if I have to be a mentee.
Yeah, if you have to be a
when do I
mentee.
start?
I'm thinking we should start earlier.
I've done middle school. I actually designed a mentoring program for middle school. The youngest was 10.
Wow.
Which is very young, and it has to be a very mature 10-year-old. But if you look at the stats, girls make up their mind to go into science, technology, engineering, and math when they are preteen to early teen. And if what you're trying to do is to widen the pipeline for STEM for women, then you do have to start younger. And for the gentleman in the audience, the person who makes the difference is their father. Their father's attitude towards them going into science, technology, and engineering and math, the father is the difference, not the teacher, not the mom, not the friends. And so, dads, go out. If you want your kid to have a great job, to be well cared for, well paid, you know, all the way through, do encourage your daughters and start encouraging them at age 10, 11, 12, because that's when the decision is made, partly because of the way our school system and the math classes, and you know, you have to finish this class by this time before you can take that class, and it's a funnel that starts at the beginning of junior high school and goes all the way through college. So that's where it starts, and that mentoring program, I think we started it 8 years ago, and it's still going strong.
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, as early as possible and continue it throughout your career, because then you start early and then it's high school, then you drop it off, and then again when you're in your mid-career, then you start looking for it. So I think there should be this continuous, like high school, college, engineering, entry level, middle level, and down again to executives. So, yeah.
I'd give an anecdote that's kind of relevant and recent. So my master coach at Symantec, who I really adore, was very intimidating to me initially when we first met. She was really quite good. And I was workforce reduced about a year ago, and she got well, actually, she was recruited by the sales executive guys that she coached, and they wanted her to come over and help them grow their sales expertise by instituting a coaching practice. So she did, and still her job was in jeopardy. So she's on her own now, and she hired me to be her coach. And she's about 3 years younger than me.
That's awesome.
So it just, you know, again, there's something else that's going on besides logic in this, and it's a natural connection, which I think women are better at. That there's something about this relationship business that women just have more of a tendency and a gift for, and men need to learn from women. And you know, some women like to learn the more task-oriented stuff from men. But it's the complementary part that really makes it work, I think. And I'm so glad that I'm coaching my coach.
Well, thank you very much for coming, and we're going to have networking.